Picture this: France's most beautiful leading actor, the one who made hearts skip beats for 6 decades, passed away last August, hiding secrets so explosive they would have destroyed lesser careers. Today, I'm revealing 8 shocking truths about Alain Delon that will change everything you thought you knew about Hollywood's most mysterious European star. For 6 decades, he captivated audiences as the quintessential European leading man. Those unforgettable blue eyes, that perfect bone structure, and an aura of danger that made him irresistible on screen. The actor who could make audiences swoon with a single glance had himself battled profound loneliness throughout his life, admitting in later interviews that despite being surrounded by people, he often felt utterly alone. This vulnerability stemmed from abandonment trauma that began when he was just 4 years old. But here's what they don't tell you in the film histories. Delon openly acknowledged his connections to the criminal underworld, lived through one of France's biggest political scandals, and left behind a trail of broken hearts and family feuds that dominated headlines right up until his final days. Today, we're diving into 8 secrets about Alain Delon that reveal the person behind the myth. And trust me, the real story is far more fascinating than any role he ever played. Secret 1. From street fighter to silver screen. Alain Delon was born on November 8, 1935, in Sceaux, near Paris, but his path to stardom began in the most unlikely way. His parents divorced when he was just 4 years old, and he was placed in foster care. What most people don't know is that when his foster parents passed away in 1946, 11-year-old Alain was sent back to biological parents who had become strangers to him. This double abandonment, first by his birth parents, then by loss of his foster parents, created deep attachment wounds that would haunt him for life. This wasn't the privileged upbringing you'd expect from someone who became Europe's most elegant leading actor. As a teenager, Delon was frequently expelled from boarding schools and developed a reputation as a troublemaker and petty thief. The nuns at his boarding school in Issy-les-Moulineaux described him as a boy consumed by anger at the world. And indeed, this rage would fuel both his rebellious youth and later his intense on-screen performances. But here's where his story takes a dramatic turn. His stepfather decided he needed discipline and sent him to work in a butcher shop, where teenage Alain learned harsh realities about life and endings. Even then, he was expelled for allegedly stealing and forging grades. Fed up with his rebellious stepson, the family shipped him off to military service. At 17, Delon enlisted in the French Navy and served in what was then French Indochina for 4 years. The military gave him a harsh choice: face court-martial for stealing a jeep, or serve in the dangerous war zone of Indochina. Young Delon chose war over disgrace, but the experience of witnessing violence and trauma in combat would later influence his ability to portray cold, calculating characters on screen with such chilling authenticity. Returning to France in the mid-1950s, he worked as a porter at Paris's wholesale food market, Les Halles, and spent time in the red light Pigalle district. It was during this rough period that he made connections with street criminals, relationships that would later come back to haunt him. The transformation from street tough to movie star happened almost by accident. Actor Jean-Claude Brialy encountered Delon and invited him to the 1957 Cannes Film Festival, where Delon made some professional contacts. He made his film debut the next year with a small role in Send a Woman When the Devil Fails. And the rest, as they say, is cinema history. Secret 2. The love story that broke 2 hearts. In 1958, something magical happened when Alain Delon met Austrian actress Romy Schneider on the set of the film Christine. At just 20 years old, Romy was already an international star, having appeared in 11 films, including the beloved Sissy trilogy. Remarkably, it wasn't love at first sight. Romy found Alain too good-looking and thought he seemed arrogant, while he considered her slightly pompous. They couldn't even speak each other's language, making communication awkward and leading to arguments on set. but something shifted during filming. As Alain later recalled in Paris Match magazine, "We often used to ask this lover's question. Who fell in love first, you or me? We would count 1, 2, 3, and then reply in unison, neither you nor me, together." After finishing the movie, Alain slipped a letter into Romy's handbag before she boarded her plane back to Austria. That night, they both burst into tears, realizing how much they meant to each other. The next day, despite strong disapproval from her family, Romy flew to Paris to live with Alain. They were engaged within months and spent 4 tumultuous years together. They were dubbed the fiancés of Europe by the media, becoming the golden couple of 1960s cinema. What made their love so profound was how it seemed to heal both of their wounded souls. Romy had been controlled by a domineering mother her entire career, while Alain had never experienced unconditional love. In each other, they found the acceptance they'd both desperately craved. But in 1964, Delon abruptly left Romy by letter to marry Nathalie Barthélemy, who was pregnant with his child. The breakup devastated Romy so completely that friends worried she might never recover. She fell into a deep depression, and those close to her said she never fully got over Alain's abandonment. Yet remarkably, their love evolved into something even more precious, a lifelong friendship built on forgiveness and genuine care. When Romy tragically passed away in 1982, Delon was so grief-stricken that friends said it triggered his own battles with depression years later. He called her the love of my life and kept a photo of her in his wallet until his passing 42 years later. Secret 3. The Markovic Affair, a scandal that shook France. In 1968, Alain Delon became embroiled in what became known as the Markovic Affair, a political scandal that followed the violent end of Stefan Markovic, Delon's friend and bodyguard. Stefan Markovic was a Serbian former street fighter who had become more than just Delon's employee. They were friends. Delon, still struggling with trust issues from his traumatic childhood, had found in Markovic someone who understood violence and survival. Their friendship was built on mutual respect between two individuals who had fought their way out of difficult circumstances. But Markovic wasn't just providing security. He used his proximity to Delon to host wild parties for France's elite, but these weren't innocent gatherings. Markovic had secretly installed cameras throughout his house, especially in the bedrooms, collecting compromising photos of guests that he could use for blackmail. On October 1st, 1968, Markovic's body was found in a public dump in Elancourt, west of Paris. He had been beaten and shot execution style. Before his demise, Markovic had written to his brother, if anything happened to him, they should look at Alain Delon and his friend François Marcantoni, a known Corsican gangster. The scandal exploded when it emerged that among Markovic's collection of compromising photos were allegedly scandalous shots of Claude Pompidou, wife of future French President Georges Pompidou. This was devastating timing, as Pompidou was preparing to run for president. Delon was devastated by the loss of his friend and terrified by the implications for his career. Delon was detained for 24 hours on October 12, 1968, and interrogated for hours despite having a fever. During his 24-hour detention, witnesses described him as genuinely distraught, not just about the legal trouble, but about losing someone he had trusted. This betrayal by someone close to him reinforced his lifelong fear of letting people get too near. His friend Marcantoni was initially charged with the crime and held for a year before charges were dropped. The case remains unsolved to this day. Later investigation revealed that the photos of Madame Pompidou were fakes, created using a substitute as a look-alike, but the damage was done. The affair cast a shadow over Delon's career and cemented his reputation as someone who moved in dangerous circles. Secret 4. His only marriage was doomed from the start. Alain Delon married only once in his life, and it happened while he was still entangled with other women. In 1964, he met Nathalie Barthélemy in a Paris nightclub while he was on a night out with Romy Schneider. When Nathalie became pregnant, they married in secret. But the relationship was stormy from the beginning. They divorced in 1969 after Delon took up with one of his co-stars, Mireille d'Arc, following a disappointing year in Hollywood. What made this particularly scandalous was the timing and circumstances. The marriage was already in trouble when the Markovic affair erupted. Police discovered that Markovic had been having an affair with Delon's wife Nathalie. This added another layer of potential motive to the case. Despite being known for his own affairs, Delon was described as an old-fashioned celebrity who took pride in his own conquests, but went off like a volcano when his partner did the same. After their divorce, Nathalie revealed the emotional truth behind their failed marriage. He never spoke to me about Romy, but sometimes I saw a shadow of sadness in his eyes, and I knew it was for her. Even in marriage, Delon remained haunted by his lost love, making it impossible for any other relationship to fully flourish. The couple had one son together, Anthony Delon, who would later become embroiled in the family feuds that dominated Alain's final years. Their divorce was finalized on grounds of serious mutual insult, a remarkably dramatic legal phrase that perfectly captured the toxic nature of their relationship. Secret 5. The 15-year love affair that nearly lasted. After his divorce from Nathalie, Delon began his longest relationship with Mireille d'Arc, a model-turned-actress and documentary maker. Their relationship lasted 15 years, and they remained friends until her passing in 2017. Mireille d'Arc represented something different for Delon: stability, intelligence, and genuine companionship. She was beautiful, certainly, but she was also accomplished in her own right, making documentaries and pursuing serious acting roles. Unlike his tumultuous marriage, this relationship seemed to offer Delon a chance at happiness. But even this seemingly perfect partnership couldn't last. Delon left behind an outsized, idiosyncratic cultural footprint, but his personal relationships were often marked by the same restlessness that characterized his early life. He eventually moved on to Dutch model Rosalie van Bremen, with whom he had 2 more children, Alain Fabien and Anouchka, though they never married. What's remarkable is that Mireille remained loyal to Delon throughout her life. When she passed away in 2017, it was said to be one of the few times in his later years that the famously stoic actor was seen publicly emotional. Those close to him said he cried for days, calling her name in his sleep. Secret 6. The secret son he never acknowledged. One of Delon's most painful family secrets involves Henri Boulogne, a photographer and actor born in 1962, to the German rock star Nico. Nico, the Velvet Underground singer and actress, claimed to have had a son with Delon, but this is where Delon's story takes a cruel turn. Delon consistently denied paternity, despite admitting having had a brief affair with Nico. In a moment of brutal honesty that would haunt both him and Henri for decades, Delon once told the young individual, "You don't have my eyes, you don't have my hair. You are not my son, you will never be my son. I only slept with your mother once." What makes this rejection even more heartbreaking is that Delon's own mother, Edith Boulogne, believed Henri was indeed her grandson and helped raise him when Nico proved unable to care for the child. This meant that while Delon rejected his potential son, his mother embraced the boy, creating a painful family dynamic that lasted for decades. Henri Boulogne passed away in 2023, never having received acknowledgement from the person he believed to be his father. In his final years, Henri struggled with addiction and depression, telling friends that his father's rejection had shaped his entire life. He passed away alone in Paris, still carrying his stepfather's surname and the weight of a father's denial. The situation reflected Delon's complicated relationship with family and responsibility. While he could be deeply devoted to those he chose to love, he could also be ruthlessly decisive about cutting people out of his life. Henri's story became a symbol of the emotional cost of Delon's uncompromising nature. Secret 7. His controversial political views. As Delon aged, he became increasingly outspoken about politics, often courting controversy with his views. He was outspoken off stage and courted controversy, notably when he said he regretted the abolition of capital punishment and spoke disparagingly of same-gender marriage, which was legalized in France in 2013. He publicly defended the far-right National Front and telephoned its founder, Jean-Marie Le Pen, an old friend, to congratulate him when the party did well in 2014. He stirred further controversy in 2015 by jumping to the defense of ex-minister Nadine Morano, who declared France a white race country that she didn't want to see become Muslim. "She has the courage to say it," Delon said. These political statements created a divide in how people viewed him. While he was adored by many, he also faced many criticisms. His support for polarizing politicians and his statements against homosexuality drew significant backlash. The contrast was stark. Here was someone who had embodied sophisticated European culture on screen, yet whose personal political views seemed to contradict the cosmopolitan image he projected. It was another example of how the private Delon often clashed with his public persona. Secret 8. The family feud that consumed his final years. Delon's last years were overshadowed by a bitter family feud that played out in French media with all the drama of a soap opera. In recent years, Delon was at the center of a family feud over his care, which made headlines in French media. After suffering a stroke in 2019, the once powerful star became increasingly vulnerable and dependent on others, a position that terrified someone who had spent his life maintaining absolute control. His cognitive decline made him paranoid and suspicious, struggling to recognize the very children fighting over his care. The trouble began with Romy Schneider, who had been living with Delon since 2006. In July 2023, his 3 children filed a lawsuit against her, accusing her of overstepping her authority and having ulterior motives. After this, she was evicted from the estate. But then the children turned on each other. In January 2024, Anthony accused his sister, Anushka, described as their father's favorite child, of preying on their weakened father. The medical test Anthony referenced showed cognitive degradation, which places my father in a position of psychological weakness, and therefore of vulnerability. A devastating assessment of someone who had once been France's most commanding screen presence. Delon responded by threatening to report his son to the police. Those close to the family reported that, in his lucid moments, the aging star would break down crying, asking why his children couldn't love each other the way he had tried to love each of them. Imperfectly, but genuinely. In April 2024, a judge placed Delon under reinforced curatorship, meaning he no longer had full freedom to manage his assets. Perhaps the most heartbreaking aspect of this family war was how it played out in front of Delon himself. This legal protection was put in place due to concerns about his health and well-being amid all the family squabbling. The feud, allegedly, was never about inheritance. The will had already been settled. Anushka is expected to receive 50% of his estate, while the 2 sons would share the remaining half. His fortune is estimated to be worth anywhere from 50 million euros to 200 million euros, amassed not just from acting but from his production company, properties, art collections, and business ventures. In his final months, Delon found solace in his relationship with his beloved dog Lubo, a Belgian Malinois he called my end-of-life companion. He once said, "My dogs love me, no matter who I am or what I do." It is unconditional love, love without thinking, complete and true love. This relationship with animals represented the pure affection he had always sought, but rarely found with humans. So there you have it, 8 secrets that reveal Alain Delon as far more than just a beautiful face on the silver screen. What strikes me most about his story is how it perfectly captures the complexity of human nature. Here was someone capable of incredible tenderness, staying loyal to Romy Schneider decades after their breakup, maintaining a 15-year relationship with Mireille d'Arc, yet also capable of shocking cruelty, like his treatment of Ari Boulogne. When Delon passed away in August 2024, foreign press referred to him as the last great myth of French cinema. But perhaps what made him mythical wasn't just his beauty or his talent, it was his contradictions. He played ice-cold characters with such conviction because he understood both light and darkness. He moved through scandal and controversy while maintaining an air of untouchable elegance. The funeral was held privately at his estate, and true to his word, he was buried in the chapel next to the cemetery where his beloved dogs rest. His final wish to have his dog Lubo euthanized and buried with him was mercifully refused by his family, who understood that even in passing, there should be limits to one person's need for absolute control. Looking back at Delon's life, I'm struck by how he never apologized for who he was. Whether it was his criminal connections, his political views, or his complicated relationships with women and family, he lived on his own terms right up until the end. That kind of uncompromising authenticity, for better and worse, is something we rarely see in today's carefully managed celebrity culture. As his family said in their final statement, he passed away peacefully in his home, in Douchy, surrounded by his 3 children and his family. Despite all the feuds and scandals, they were there at the end. Maybe that tells us something important about family, forgiveness, and the enduring power of blood ties. Alain Delon wasn't just an actor. He was a wounded soul who found salvation in performance, an abandoned child who spent his life seeking the unconditional love he'd been denied. Someone who understood that beauty and talent weren't enough to heal the deepest human wounds. His story reminds us that behind every perfect image lies a human being, flawed and fascinating, struggling with the same desires for love, recognition, and meaning that drive us all. Alain Delon's story proves that real life is often more dramatic than any screenplay. From street fighter to cinema icon, from scandal to heartbreak, his journey reminds us that fame and beauty can't heal every wound. If you found these secrets as captivating as I did, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more untold stories from Hollywood's golden era. Who knows? Your favorite star might have secrets even more surprising than Delon's.